Negotiators from the US, Egypt, Qatar and Israel are expected to gather in Paris in the coming hours for talks of a Gaza ceasefire and release of Israeli hostages. Right now, the clock is ticking down to an Israeli ground offensive on Rafah if hostages are not released by March 10th. Well, during the last round of talks, the Israelis were present but not engaged. But now, as CNN's Jeremy Diamond reports, the Israelis plan to take a more active role in negotiations for hostages as well as that ceasefire. Here's more now from Jeremy Diamond reporting in from Tel Aviv.
Well, after it seemed that Israel and Hamas were at an impasse, negotiations over a potential deal to see a temporary ceasefire and the release of hostages, they appear to be very much back on track. Israeli media reporting that Israel does intend to send a delegation on Friday to talks in Paris. We already knew that CIA Director Bill Burns, Qatari and Egyptian intelligence officials as well were set to meet on Friday in Paris to move those negotiations forward. And we're also getting signs of optimism, signs of progress from key members of Israel's war cabinet. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant on Thursday saying that Israel is expanding the authority of its negotiators, allowing them to return to the negotiating table, not just in listen-only mode, which is how it appears to have happened during the last round, but to actually actively engage in these negotiations, to actually try and influence the course of those talks and to try and strike a deal. Benny Gantz, another member of the war cabinet, former member of the opposition, he also indicated that there are, quote, initial signs that indicate the possibility of progress in these negotiations. The Hostage and Missing Families Forum, which represents many of these hostage families for their part, welcoming this decision by the war cabinet to send negotiators to Paris to push these talks forward. And certainly this will be a critical moment. We know that every time the CIA director has headed out for these negotiations, it's typically at an inflection point. But one thing that we do know is that time is certainly running out. The holy Muslim holiday of Ramadan is just over 2 weeks away, and Israeli officials have indicated that that is their deadline for deciding whether or not there will be a deal, whether or not a deal can be struck with Hamas, or whether Israel will instead choose to move forward with a major military offensive in Gaza's southernmost city of Rafah. 1.5 million people are currently living in that city, and there's no question that Israel is under enormous pressure not to carry out that operation under the current conditions, including from their American counterparts. So these talks will be critical not only to determining the fate of hostages, but also for the people of Gaza to see if they can get a humanitarian pause as conditions there grow increasingly dire, and of course for those 1.5 million living in Rafah. Jeremy Diamond, CNN, Tel Aviv.